The soup had a strange smell. The mother-in-law called the police, and a horrifying crime of the daughter-in-law. At Old Spring Manor, the golden light cast long shadows on the cold wooden walls, quietly cloaking the dinner of 3 people: Mrs. Eleanor, a woman who had lived too long to fear death, her son Ethan, and Lauren, the daughter-in-law trapped in that setting like a decorative object that could move. "Lauren, more bread for your mother," Mrs. Eleanor ordered without looking up. "Yes," Lauren replied, quietly rising. She poured more water, sprinkled bread crumbs into the golden pumpkin soup, and ladled in just enough for her demanding mother-in-law. "Ethan, do you see this?" She even burned the bottom of the soup. "Home all day and still can't manage a decent meal." Ethan looked down at his plate, voice flat. "I don't smell anything." Lauren tightened her grip on the spoon, lips pressed together. She didn't argue. She never did. Every response only gave Eleanor more satisfaction. Eleanor brought the spoon to her lips, her mouth curled with suspicion. She tasted a spoonful, then another. Suddenly, she froze. Her eyes widened. Her hand jerked upward, and the spoon clattered onto the table with a sharp clang. "Ethan," she gasped, clutching her chest. "My heart." "Mom." Lauren stepped forward, but Eleanor had already bolted upright, blood spurting from her mouth. Red soaked the tablecloth, trickled down her lap. "What the hell?" Ethan leapt to his feet. "Mom! Mom!" Lauren stood frozen. She backed away as if struck, eyes wide in shock. "Call an ambulance. Now!" Ethan shouted, the phone trembling in his hand. 10 minutes later, the sound of sirens echoed through the gates of Old Spring Manor. Mrs. Eleanor was rushed away, pale and gasping, her heartbeat erratic like it was counting down her final curses. At Springfield General Hospital, Chief Physician Dr. Matthew Jameson stepped out of the emergency room. Ethan and Lauren rushed toward him. "Is she going to live, doctor?" Ethan asked, lips pale. "Mrs. Eleanor suffered acute poisoning," Dr. Matthews said gravely. "We found traces of digitalis in her blood, a toxin that speeds up the heart until it stops. It's extremely dangerous without prompt treatment." "Digitalis?" Ethan frowned. "That's a heart medication, right? Why would my mother?" "An overdose or intentional poisoning could cause this," the doctor explained. Lauren spoke up, her voice hoarse. I don't have that drug at home. I don't even know anyone who uses it." Dr. Matthew looked at her for a moment, then said slowly, "I'll have to notify the police." 2 hours later, in the hospital room where Eleanor was recovering, Detective Daniel Sullivan from the Sheriff's Department entered with a young female officer named Isabel Thompson. Mrs. Eleanor opened her eyes, voice raspy but clear. "There was only one person who cooked that dinner." She pointed at Lauren, her tone as final as a sentence. "My daughter-in-law. She wanted to kill me." Lauren froze. Ethan said nothing, his gaze elsewhere. "Are you certain?" the detective asked. "I supervised dinner. I never left the kitchen. That venomous snake was the only one who seasoned, plated, and served it. No one else. Do you even know who she is? Her mother's insane. Her grandmother was institutionalized. Her whole bloodline is rotten." "Mrs. Eleanor, please calm down," Officer Thompson said gently. Eleanor propped herself up with her arms, her eyes cold as blades. "If I die, arrest her. She poisoned me." Ethan remained silent. Detective Daniel gave a slight nod and turned to Isabel. "Open a case file. Name, Lauren Franklin. Suspected poisoning with digitalis. Start at the house." That night, Old Spring Manor was searched by police. Lauren stood in the kitchen corner, eyes fixed on the spot on the wall where she had washed the vegetables and prepared the soup. Isabel approached her, voice soft. "Do you have anything to say, Ms. Franklin?" "I didn't do anything. I just made soup like every other day." I had no reason to hurt her. How long have you lived here? 6 years. And any conflict with your mother-in-law? Lauren gave a bitter smile, like mocking herself. I wasn't allowed to have conflict. The next morning, local newspapers ran the story on the front page. Blood-red widow, suspected of poisoning mother-in-law with pumpkin soup. Lauren's wedding photo from 6 years ago was blown-up white dress, radiant smile now repurposed as evidence for the public to judge her. Outside the gates of Old Spring Manor, townspeople gathered. Murderer. Poisoning your mother-in-law to steal the house. Disgusting. An elderly woman named Carol Dalton hurled a rotten egg at the gate. If this were the old days, she'd be hanged in the village square. Lauren stood behind the curtain, watching. The wind blew her hair around. Ethan stood behind her, arms crossed. Will you say anything? She asked softly. He said nothing. You don't believe me? Ethan stepped back, his eyes clouded. My mother said you did it. For me, that's enough. Lauren gripped the curtain tighter. You said you loved me. People change. Do you know what I gave up to enter this house? Ethan turned away. Now you'll lose even more. Late at night, the phone rang. Lauren picked up quickly. Her mother's voice Lucy trembled on the other end. Lauren? What's going on? I saw it in the news. Mom, I didn't do it. I swear. Are you okay? I'm coming over. No. Don't come. They're watching me. Where's Ethan? He believes her. Silence for a moment. Then Lucy spoke, as if swallowing pain, my daughter, live. Even if the whole world turns against you. The next morning, Lauren went to the pharmacy to buy sedatives. As she walked out, a group of townspeople was waiting. Still has the nerve to walk around in public, a man named Joseph Miller sneered. She thinks we forgot, added Carol. A tomato flew straight at Lauren's shoulder. She didn't cry out. She just stood there, wide-eyed, like a soulless shell. A voice rang out. The wind blew harder as the news spread across Ohio. In old cafes, at the morning market stalls, and even in St. Mark's Church, the name Lauren Franklin turned into a curse, like a witch once burned at the stake and returned to walk among the living. On Voice of the Valley radio, a broadcaster announced in a booming voice. Breaking news, poison scandal shocks Old Spring Manor. Mrs. Eleanor, the region's most powerful widow, suspected to have been poisoned with digitalis. The alleged perpetrator is her daughter-in-law, Lauren Franklin, currently under investigation. The press has dubbed her the Blood-Red Widow. At Old Spring Manor, every morning, crowds gathered outside the gate. Banners hung right at the entrance. Justice for Mrs. Eleanor. Murderous witch, get out of our town. Lauren stood silently behind the iron door, her eyes vacant. Ethan walked past behind her without looking, without speaking. You won't say a word, not even one word that I'm innocent. He stopped, voice cold, I'm not sure you are. So that's enough to let me face that mob alone. Ethan turned to her, voice low, better than standing by a murderer. The next day, as Lauren went to the pharmacy to buy bandages, her hand still cut from the kitchen, a frail old woman suddenly emerged from the crowd and hurled a rotten egg at her coat. Damn witch! Lauren stumbled, the stench soaking into her hair and clothes. A young man named Joaquin raised his phone, laughing loudly. Put it on TikTok, let the whole country see the murderer's face. At the Black Cat Bar, a group of older men sat around a wooden table. That girl seemed off from the day she arrived in town, Mr. Gregory nodded. Remember? At the wedding, she didn't kiss the crucifix, said Mr. Paul, sipping his drink. Modern women, full of schemes, chimed in Mrs. Martha, the bakery owner. A thin man, chain-smoking, added quietly, heard her grandmother got thrown out of Old Spring Manor too, for seducing the master of the house. Everyone fell silent for a few seconds. Then, all nodded in agreement. That night, Lauren opened her phone. The screen was flooded with anonymous messages. You'll die in prison. Try eating your own soup, poisonous and stupid. Should have been burned like an old witch. Done sleeping with Ethan. Now trying to kill his mom. She collapsed onto the bathroom floor, phone slipping onto the tiles. In the darkness, only the sound of dripping water and her choked breathing remained. Another night, she tried to talk to Ethan. I'm scared. Really scared. I can't even leave the house. Then don't. Don't you see something's wrong? They call me a demon. They throw things at me in public. Ethan flipped the newspaper, not even looking up. I told you not to go outside. You didn't listen. You promised you'd protect me. Let's not talk about promises right now, he replied, voice cold as stone. On Sunday, at church, Father Matthew offered prayers for the victim still lying in the hospital, a mother poisoned by her daughter-in-law. Lauren sat in the back row, head lowered. As the service ended, Mrs. Carroll and a group of women approached. You dare show up here to pray? Praying for what? For the soup to be tastier next time. Get out, you heartless thing. Lauren hurried toward the exit, but someone shoved her, and she fell hard onto the stone steps. The only person to reach out and help her up was Father Matthew. He steadied her, whispering softly, silence isn't weakness, but sometimes, speaking doesn't save anyone either. Lauren's eyes welled up. What do you do when everyone thinks you're guilty? Father Matthew was quiet. You survive. On a night of relentless rain, her phone rang. It was her mother, Lucy. Lauren picked up, startled. Mom. Sweetheart, did they hurt you? They kicked me out of the hospital when I asked about Mrs. Eleanor. They did what to you? They called me the mother of a murderer. They banned me from coming back. The police even blocked my number. Lauren collapsed onto the floor, clutching her head. Mom, I didn't do it. I never. My girl, Lucy choked, as long as you're alive, I won't let go. Don't die in that house. The next morning, Lauren received an envelope with no name on it. Inside was a worn photocopy of a photo her holding a small cat, dated 2019, the year of her wedding. A red ink message scribbled across her face. Witches love cats. Should we burn it or you first? The police called to inform her that the case had entered the toxicology confirmation phase, not enough evidence for arrest, but the investigation remained intense. Detective Daniel Sullivan called. Do you have anything to add, Ms. Franklin? Lauren answered, I just want to live like a normal person. But if surviving is also a crime, then I don't know what else to do. That afternoon, Lauren stepped out into the backyard. She sat before the orange tree Eleanor had planted, the same one where the old woman once said. A daughter-in-law should never plant anything in her husband's garden. Either the tree dies or the house falls. Lauren closed her eyes. The wind passed through, carrying the musty scent of moss and wet earth. A child's voice came from behind the fence. You're the one who killed that old lady, huh? Lauren looked up. A boy around 8 years old, Mikey, the neighbor's grandson, was peering at her through the wooden slats. No, she whispered. I didn't kill anyone. If not you, then who? Lauren stayed silent. She didn't know what to say anymore. At the end of the chapter, a short diary excerpt appears. No one knows when Lauren wrote it. Everything started with a bowl of soup. But no one talks about what led to it. 6 years of control, silence, and having my right to live stripped away. If this is what makes me a witch, then the witch isn't dead yet. Sheriff's Department Headquarters, Springfield. The interrogation room was pale gray, a fluorescent light shining straight down on the metal table. The cold iron chair dug into Lauren's back as she sat, hands on her lap, struggling to stay upright against the weight of exhaustion and the fear lodged in her throat like a stone. Across from her sat Detective Daniel Sullivan and Officer Isabel Thompson. Daniel flipped through a few pages, eyes unblinking. "Miss Franklin. This is the third time we've asked you to come in. This time, we have a 48-hour hold for investigation. Do you understand?" Lauren nodded. "I understand." Daniel tapped his pen lightly on the table. "You were the only one who cooked that dinner?" "Yes. And in Mrs. Eleanor's soup, we found digitalis, a toxin that causes cardiac arrhythmias. Very specific, hard to obtain, and only dangerous in overdose. I didn't put that in. Do you know what digitalis is?" "I do. It's used for heart conditions. If I had put it in, she'd be dead by now." Daniel squinted. "Are you saying?" Lauren met his gaze. "If I'd wanted to kill her, she'd be dead. I know exactly how much digitalis it would take. But I didn't do it. And if you think I'm dumb enough to poison someone and still let them live, then you've got the wrong impression of me." The temperature in the room dropped a few degrees. Isabel opened another file. "You've lived at Old Spring Manor since 2019. "Yes." "Do you work?" "I used to be an art teacher. But after I got married, she made me quit. Rich women don't need to teach children," she said. Daniel continued, "Who controls the finances in the house?" "Mrs. Eleanor. I don't have a bank card, can't touch any assets. If I need to buy something, I have to write it down and get Ethan's signature." Daniel tilted his head. "Even Ethan? He never disobeys his mother." "Never." Isabel pushed a stack of papers toward Lauren. "You've been pregnant twice. We found the records. But no doctor is listed." "Why?" Lauren breathed slowly. "The first time. I found out late. No one congratulated me. No one asked. That night I had severe cramps. I bled so much. Mrs. Eleanor said, if you can't keep it, it must be weak." Ethan said nothing. "He didn't take me to the hospital. Just called a private doctor, some old man I'd never seen before. I don't know his name." "Isabel, and the second time?" "I was scared, so I didn't tell them early. I waited until the third month." Ethan was cold. "Mrs. Eleanor looked at me like I'd brought a demon baby into the house." Lauren laughed a bitter, jarring laugh, then fell silent. Week 24. I was cooking when I heard a clanking sound near the gas stove. I bent down to check, and the smell of gas hit me hard. Then everything went black. When I woke up, the baby was gone. Daniel paused. "There was a gas leak." "That's what they said. But I never leave the valve open. And that day I remember clearly I turned it off properly. That smell, it couldn't have been an accident." Isabel asked, "The doctor who treated you that time?" "No one let me speak to a doctor. She said, the baby's dead." "Stop whining." Ethan just nodded. "I asked him if there were photos, any test results. He said, there's nothing worth keeping." Daniel slammed his pen on the table. "Do you suspect they did something to the baby?" "It's not suspicion," Lauren said, her eyes dark. "I know. I felt it. When I came to, I heard her whispering to someone. She said, 'Get it out of here. Don't let it come back.' When I asked what it was, she just laughed. That laugh, it chilled me to the bone." Isabel stared into Lauren's eyes and saw a woman who shed no tears. Only tight skin, dry lips, and a throat swallowing each word like broken glass. Daniel stood up and opened the door. "We'll continue our investigation. In the meantime, you are not to leave the county." Lauren stood as well, then asked, "What gives them the right to call me a murderer before there's even a trial?" Daniel didn't turn around. At Old Spring Manor, all it takes is a rumor. At that same moment, behind the sheriff's department, Ethan sat in a car, speaking with his private lawyer Arthur Morgan, a plump man with slicked back hair. "Are you sure she's not mentally unstable?" Arthur asked as he flipped through files. Ethan frowned. "She's always been fragile. Emotional. Sometimes, she screams at night, sleep talks, cries. Very unstable. Any family history?" Ethan sighed. "Her mother was treated for depression. Her grandmother? I'm not sure. My mother said she was locked in a mental institution for being possessed." Arthur took notes. "We could use that to weaken her case. If she's mentally unfit, her actions have no legal standing." Ethan nodded, his eyes distant. Back home, Lauren opened the hidden cabinet beneath the stairs where she kept a journal. She flipped to an old entry. "February, the baby has a heartbeat. I dreamt of a tiny hand touching my cheek. April, I saw blood. I begged her to take me to the hospital. She said, if there's blood, it means the demon is trying to escape." Lauren shut the notebook. Outside the window, newspapers continued to be thrown at her doorstep. On the front pages, her face was slashed and distorted, headlines screamed. "Evil daughter-in-law or mentally ill victim. Old Spring Manor says no to cruelty." That night, the landline rang. "Lauren Franklin?" a raspy voice asked. "Yes. Who is this?" "I'm Susan. I used to work as a maid for Mrs. Eleanor." Lauren sat up straight. "Mrs. Susan? You were fired." "I know. But I have something to say. About her. About that house. And, about you. Where are you?" "I'll come to the sheriff's station tomorrow morning. Don't tell anyone." "No one. Do you understand?" Lauren swallowed. "I understand." Susan whispered, "Some curses don't disappear. And blood always finds its way home." The next morning, the sheriff's department building was bathed in pale sunlight. The wall clock ticked steadily, each second dragging the moment heavier. Mrs. Susan, the elderly housemaid with silver hair and deep-set eyes, walked in. Her hand clutched a small bag tightly, her gaze both firm and mysterious. Detective Daniel Sullivan stood to greet her. "Mrs. Susan, thank you for coming. What would you like to report?" She nodded, her voice gravelly but clear. "Sir, I used to work for Mrs. Eleanor's family, more than 6 years ago. I'm here to tell what most people in town are too afraid to say." Officer Isabel Thompson offered a gentle smile and motioned for her to sit. "Please, speak freely." Susan took a deep breath and looked Daniel straight in the eyes. 6 years ago specifically, in 2017 Mrs. Eleanor took me to a fortune teller in Salem. Daniel frowned. "A fortune teller? Can you elaborate?" Susan nodded. "He was well known in the area. Read blood, did astrology. Mrs. Eleanor believed in him deeply. I remember clearly what he said, the aura of bloodshed will enter your home, in the form of a daughter-in-law. If she stays beyond 5 years, blood will be spilled." Isabel's eyes widened. "And that daughter-in-law was?" Susan gave a thin, icy smile. "Lauren Franklin." Susan sighed, recalling, Mrs. Eleanor looked at me, eyes blazing. "If she stays too long, this family will know nothing but pain." I asked, "Are you sure?" She replied, "Just wait and see." Daniel leaned forward, eyes sharp. "What happened after that?" "The next month, Mr. Ethan married that girl. Lauren came like a cold storm. Mrs. Eleanor told me, tell everyone she's a demon. Don't let anyone believe her." Isabel interjected, "Did you ever see anything odd about Lauren?" Susan frowned. She was completely isolated. No money, no freedom. But I remember, there were times she cried in the kitchen, silently, like a shadow. The room grew heavy with Susan's story. Would you be willing to speak publicly? Isabel asked. That's why I was fired, Susan answered. Mrs. Eleanor heard me talk about this. She called me superstitious and a liar. I lost my job, and they cut all ties. Daniel nodded. You came to warn us? Susan nodded firmly. Yes. I've seen things no one else believes. This family is cursed. And now, the curse is coming to life. Before leaving, Susan turned to Lauren, her gaze tinged with compassion. Daughter-in-law, don't let the darkness consume you. Remember, blood never forgets the way home. Lauren thanked her with a faint nod. After Susan left, Daniel and Isabel sat down to review the conversation. Daniel said seriously, we can't ignore what Mrs. Susan just shared. This might be the key to understanding the whole story. Isabel agreed. But we still need evidence more than just words. Elsewhere in the city, Lauren sat in her room and opened her old laptop. She read an email from her mother, Lucy. My dear girl, never forget the past can't be hidden forever. Look into your grandmother, Catherine Franklin. She once worked as a maid in Eleanor's house in 1975, but was dismissed, institutionalized, and died in isolation. Lauren clenched her fists and whispered, Grandma. Is this where it all began? She decided to call Mr. Raymond, the elderly neighbor who had worked at the local hospital for decades. Mr. Raymond, I want to know about Catherine Franklin, she said over the phone. Mr. Raymond's raspy voice replied, she was Eleanor's maid once, but was fired for allegedly seducing the master of the house, and getting pregnant. They sent her to a psychiatric hospital. No one knows exactly how she died. Rumors say she froze, alone. The baby disappeared. No one claimed it. And that baby, Lauren asked, was it my mother? Exactly, Mr. Raymond sighed. Lauren lowered her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. The next day, Lauren went to the Old Spring Manor Public Library to find old records about Mrs. Eleanor's family. She was assisted by Mrs. Carroll, the same woman who had despised her but couldn't deny her decades of archival knowledge. Mrs. Carroll muttered, here. A few newspaper pages from the 1970s. Read them but don't let anyone know you asked about that past. Lauren flipped through the yellowed pages, her eyes gradually lighting up as she read. Catherine Franklin, maid of a prominent family, accused of harassing the master, became pregnant out of wedlock. Committed to a mental institution, body lost in the cold of winter. On her way home, Lauren heard whispers behind her. Which you think you'll escape? A group of young women had been following her. Lauren shivered and walked faster. Back home, she received another call from Mrs. Susan. You've learned something, haven't you? Yes. It's all connected to my grandmother. I see a curse running through 3 generations. Susan spoke, her voice like a sigh from the deep. You need to prepare yourself. That family doesn't let anyone survive once you're in the game. Another evening, Lauren called Ethan. You have to help me. Not to prove I'm innocent but to save our son. Ethan sighed. I don't know what to do. My mother, she's too powerful. You don't have to take my side but don't stand with the darkness. Silence. Whose side are you on? I don't know. Lauren was speechless. She hung up. Meanwhile, at Old Spring Manor, Mrs. Eleanor lay in her hospital bed, her eyes still sharp. She smiled faintly when she heard the police had interviewed Susan. She whispered to the nurse. We will not lose. Blood lives forever. The vow is never forgotten. Back in the investigation, police began searching an old room in Lauren's home, where she kept family memorabilia. Isabel Thompson carefully opened an old suitcase in the corner of the bedroom. What do we have here? She said, pulling out a weathered brown leather notebook. Daniel Sullivan leaned in. There's handwriting, but it's not Lauren's. Lauren stood beside them, eyes wide, unable to believe what she saw. Whose diary is this? Isabel asked. Lauren's voice trembled. It's my grandmother's. Catherine Franklin. Daniel opened the first page, reading aloud, his tone like unveiling a dark legacy. If I die in shame, may my daughter or granddaughter finish what I could not. My blood will rise again. Isabel looked at Lauren. What does this vow mean to you? Lauren choked back tears. It's the promise my grandmother left behind, 50 years ago, when she was a maid in the Eleanor household. She was locked away in an asylum. No one saved her. The newborn my mother was taken away under mysterious circumstances. My grandmother swore her blood would never be forgotten. In the interrogation room, Lauren recited entries that had been translated from the diary. May 12, 1975. I was committed to an asylum simply for being accused of seducing the master. I know the truth is that the mistress wanted me gone because of the child inside me. But I vow my blood will return to reveal everything. Isabel flipped to another page. No one knows where the baby was taken. But that child will be the spark of a revenge I couldn't finish. Footsteps echoed in the hallway. A middle-aged man in a suit stepped in. I'm James Owens, legal counsel representing the Franklin family, he introduced himself. Lauren stood up, looking at him with doubt. James said, I'm here to help. Your family's history was buried by powerful forces. But this journal, this is proof. We need to use it to expose the truth. Lauren sighed softly. But who will believe a woman cursed by an entire town? James grasped her hand firmly. Justice will come. I believe that. Back at the hospital, Mrs. Eleanor was receiving updates from her nurse. Any news about the notebook, Margaret? The nurse bowed her head. Nothing harmful so far, ma'am. But the investigators seem more interested in it. Eleanor sneered. They'll find nothing. That vow was nothing more than the delusion of a madwoman. At the Bean Haven Cafe, Lauren met her mother, Lucy. Look at this, Lucy said, placing a photocopy on the table. It's my birth certificate. The infant was registered under a false name. No parents listed. Lauren sat frozen. So Grandma was stripped of her right to be a mother. Lucy nodded. And now history is repeating itself with you. That night, Lauren called Ethan. Do you know anything about the leather notebook? He sighed. I heard. My mother's afraid it'll destroy the family. Then why won't you take my side? Why do you listen to her and leave me alone? Ethan was quiet for a moment, then said. I don't know how to stand between my mother and my wife. The next day, during a police meeting, Daniel conferred with a colleague. This journal is critical. It connects 3 tragic generations. If used correctly, it could help Lauren get justice. Another officer asked, should we warn Mrs. Eleanor? She's dangerous. Daniel frowned. We have to follow the law. Justice doesn't belong to the powerful, it belongs to the truth. Meanwhile, Lauren quietly flipped through the unfinished pages of the journal, reading the faded words. My blood does not belong to me alone. It belongs to my daughter, to my granddaughter. If one day I die in disgrace, my blood will rise again to end it all. She whispered, Grandma. I won't let your blood be spilled in vain. Outside her home, a crowd gathered again. That journal is nothing but hocus pocus. Mr. Miller yelled. Don't believe fairy tales. Mrs. Carroll added, if Lauren really had magical powers, she wouldn't be standing there taking all this. Behind the door, Lauren heard every word. Silent tears streamed down her face. Once again, Susan called. Do you see it now? That vow wasn't just a curse. It's a responsibility. Your grandmother's blood runs in you, and you must bring the truth to light. Lauren nodded. I will. Even if they want me dead. Dusk settled over Old Spring Manor, the sky tinged with a cold gray. Lauren sat in the manor's living room, her eyes weary, tracing the cracks in the wall. That day, she'd been dealt another blow. Dr. Richard Monroe, the physician overseeing the medical records, came to see her after a meeting with police. "Ms. Franklin, I need to speak to you about your medical file," he began, his voice as cold as the wind outside. Lauren frowned. "What is it, doctor?" He handed her a folder. "Upon close inspection, we discovered that the signature on the record of your second abortion was completely forged." "Forged?" Lauren shot up, eyes wide. "Yes. The doctor you believe treated you during that time does not exist in our hospital system." Lauren's voice trembled. "But I never had an abortion. I never did that." Richard looked her straight in the eye. "We also found inconsistencies in the medical records. Someone altered the data to hide the truth." Lauren choked up, her voice hoarse. "Then who did it? And why?" The next day, the investigation team arrived at Old Spring Manor to inspect the old wine cellar, a section of the estate that had long been sealed off. Isabel Thompson bent down, examining a section of wall recently patched with cement. A faint, musty odor mixed with something foul seeped through. "We need to break through this wall," Isabel said to Daniel. Daniel nodded and ordered the team to prepare the tools. With each strike of the chisel, the cement began to fall away. And then silence fell over the room as something emerged from behind the wall, a small body wrapped in silk, pale and still. Isabel shuddered, whispering, "It's the body of an unborn child, roughly 6 months along." Lauren burst into sobs. "Gabriel, my son." Police discovered a silver bracelet on the body, engraved with the name Gabriel. It was the name Lauren had chosen for the baby who never got to be born. Daniel turned to Lauren, his voice grave. "We'll do everything we can to find out who did this." Lauren lowered her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. That night, as Lauren reviewed old footage from a hallway security camera, the image was crystal clear. She was lying unconscious on the kitchen floor, blood trickling from her head. Mrs. Eleanor stood beside her, whispering to a man in a black coat. "Take it away. No one can know," she muttered. Lauren clenched her fists. Who was that man? Why would they do this? The following morning, Lauren confronted Ethan in the living room. "Did you know about this?" she asked, voice firm. Ethan slumped down, eyes hollow. My mother was the one who kept secrets. I didn't know everything." "You have to tell the truth." Lauren shouted. "I can't go against my mother. Don't you understand?" Lauren decided to go to the hospital to dig deeper. At the reception desk, she asked the attending physician, "I need to see my abortion records." The doctor stared coldly. "All of those files have been transferred to a classified archive." "Is someone trying to hide the truth?" The doctor sneered. "That's not my business." Frustrated and helpless, Lauren went to attorney James Owens. "Can you help me access my medical records?" she pleaded. James looked serious. "We'll file for a court subpoena. If the truth has been buried, justice will unearth it." That evening, a group of Old Spring Manor residents gathered in front of the estate. "The missing baby? Only a demon could do that," Mr. Miller shouted. "Witch. She deserves punishment," Mrs. Carroll growled. Lauren stood in the shadows, heart shattered. The next day, as she walked along the village path, Joseph Miller's young son ran up to her. "Do you know what happened to your baby?" Lauren knelt, tears welling in her eyes. "My son." The boy looked at her curiously. "The adults say it's a secret." Lauren called her mother, her voice trembling. "Mom, I don't know what to do anymore." Lucy replied, voice shaking, "My daughter, stay strong. The truth will not die." That night, Lauren lay in bed, eyes shut tight, imagining her son taken and buried behind a cold, stone wall. "Gabriel, can you hear me?" I'll find you. Ethan stood in the hallway, holding a phone, speaking with his attorney. Lauren, she's becoming like her mother. Mental illness runs in her blood. The lawyer responded, "We'll file for divorce and pursue custody on your mother's behalf." Ethan lowered his head. "I don't want more trouble, but I can't let the child stay with her." Lauren heard the news from a friend at the hospital. "Ethan just filed for divorce and is asking the court to hand the house over to his mother." She gave a bitter laugh. "He's destroyed every last hope." The day of the divorce hearing arrived. Lauren was brought to the Springfield courthouse wearing a pale gray outfit, her face worn and hollow. Ethan's attorney began. "Your Honor, Ms. Lauren Franklin is mentally unfit to raise a child. My client's mother, Mrs. Eleanor, is the most suitable guardian." Lauren responded. "I am not insane. I love my child and I will fight for my right to be his mother." Outside the courthouse, the public screamed in support of Eleanor and Ethan. "Evil has been caught. The witch must pay." Lauren felt the chill of an unspoken verdict, one that crushed every remaining spark of hope inside her. In the holding cell, Lauren stared at the blurry window, whispering, "If my grandmother's vow means anything, let me survive. Let her descendant survive." A fellow inmate nearby sneered. "You're a fool. Who believes in vows like that?" Lauren didn't answer. She closed her eyes, silent tears rolling down her face. Ethan never visited his wife. He never claimed his son. Baby Gabriel was kept by Mrs. Eleanor, raised inside the cold walls of the mansion. One afternoon, a friend came to visit Lauren. "Lauren, they say you're guilty." The friend looked her straight in the eyes. "How will you fight when your own husband betrays you?" Lauren remained silent, her heart aching. Outside the house, Mrs. Carroll and her group gathered again at the gate. "This is the ending she deserves," Carroll shouted. A man joined in, "Take down the witch to protect tradition." Lauren heard them through the walls. Her chest tightened painfully. That night in the detention cell, Lauren lay on the cold metal bed, her hands gripping the bars. A voice echoed in the dark. "Don't forget, Lauren, those who carry hatred often die alone." She gave a bitter smile, her eyes glinting with a flicker of resolve. "I won't survive through hate. I survive by not poisoning others the way they poisoned me. But that doesn't mean I forgive." Rain pounded the tin roof of Our Lady of Grace Convent. A shadow moved through the damp halls. Inside a modest room, a flickering oil lamp lit the aged face of an elderly woman once the private nurse of Mrs. Eleanor. Ellen Monroe sighed, sitting before a desk covered in old records. Her hands trembled as she turned the brittle pages. Finally, she picked up a sealed envelope, placed an anonymous letter on top, and gently lifted the phone. "I have to do this," she whispered, dialing. The next day, at the Springfield courthouse, the anonymous letter was submitted into evidence. Detective Daniel Sullivan and Officer Isabel Thompson, after weeks of investigation, now stood before a turning point in the case. Isabel read the letter aloud before the lawyers and judge. "I was once the private nurse of a woman named Eleanor. She paid me to take a child away, to pretend it had died at birth. But I couldn't go through with it. I left the baby at a convent and raised it as a child of God." Daniel looked directly at the judge, his voice firm and resolute. "We request to reopen the investigation, re-examine the abortion records, and search for the child who may still be alive." At Dr. Richard Monroe's office, the hospital files were opened under a new court order. This time, every detail was carefully examined under police supervision. Lauren stood nearby, her eyes filled with the anxious hope of someone who had lived in hell for far too long and was finally catching a glimpse of light. Richard frowned, his voice bitter. "Your abortion records are entirely fabricated. The doctor whose signature appears doesn't exist. This is a clear case of medical record falsification." Lauren whispered, then, "My child is still alive." In a small room at Our Lady of Grace Convent, a little boy about 3 years old with black hair like Lauren's was playing with wooden dolls. Ellen stood beside him, her voice trembling. "Gabriel, this is your mother." The boy looked up, his eyes innocent and confused. But Ellen believed with all her heart that he was the child Mrs. Eleanor had tried so hard to hide. In the courtroom, a video clip was shown, shocking everyone. It revealed Mrs. Eleanor dragging a small suitcase, stuffing a newborn inside, and whispering to a man in a black coat. "Trash. Your blood will never live in my family." The courtroom fell into suffocating silence. Ethan sat below, pale, unable to believe what he was seeing. Prosecutor Carol Abbott rose to her feet, her voice thundering. "Eleanor Franklin is charged with 5 crimes: premeditated poisoning, falsifying medical records, infant abduction, concealment of a corpse, and bodily harm leading to miscarriage. We recommend a sentence of 30 years in prison, no possibility of parole." Carol stared hard at Eleanor. "You will pay for everything you've done." In court, Mrs. Eleanor lifted her chin, voice icy. "I did everything to protect the family name, to preserve honor. Those children were a curse. I have no regrets." The judge warned her. "You have the right to remain silent. But your statement will be recorded." Ethan stood up, facing his mother. "Why, Mom? How could you do that to your own grandson? How could you be so cruel?" Mrs. Eleanor replied coldly. "This family cannot afford weakness. That child would have destroyed everything." Ethan stood frozen, his voice shaking. I can't believe you." Outside the courtroom, reporters scrambled to record and interview bystanders. An elderly woman, Carol Dalton, said, "Finally, the truth has come out. Justice never sleeps." A young man added, "Lauren deserves to be cleared. Her mother-in-law was the real monster." Lauren stepped out, clutching Ellen's hand, eyes red with tears. "Thank you. Thank you for not giving up on me." Ellen smiled. "You fought for the truth. Never give up." That night, in her cell, Mrs. Eleanor was mocked by other inmates, who called her the devil grandma. One inmate sneered. "You sowed hatred. Now reap the consequences." Mrs. Eleanor looked down at the bowl of watery soup in front of her and shook her head. "I'm not afraid. No one dares." But as she brought the spoon to her mouth, her hands trembled. She retched violently. Her eyes widened in fear. The soup smelled exactly like the bowl from that fateful night. A slow darkness crept into her gaze, without glory, without cries. The next morning at the Springfield courthouse, tension filled the air. Reporters packed the room, waiting to witness the moment when Eleanor would face the consequences of her crimes. Ethan stood beside his lawyer, eyes carrying the dim glint of late-coming remorse. The judge read the verdict in a deep, unwavering voice. After reviewing all documents, evidence, and testimonies, the court finds Eleanor Franklin guilty and sentences her to 30 years in prison, without parole, for the crimes of premeditated poisoning, falsifying medical records, infant abduction, corpse concealment, and bodily harm leading to miscarriage. Eleanor remained expressionless, head held high, offering no defense. Ethan stepped forward, his voice unsteady. "Mom, how could you do this to your own grandson?" Eleanor gave a cold, mocking smile. "That child was a thorn in my side, a seed of disaster. This family needs strength, not weakness." Ethan lowered his voice, clenching his fist. "I won't let you hurt anyone else again." Ethan's lawyer continued. The court also revokes all custody rights from Ethan Franklin and assigns guardianship of the child Gabriel to a child welfare organization. Prosecutor Carol Abbott stood up. "Lauren Franklin will be reinstated and granted full legal custody of Gabriel. We will support her through this process." Applause erupted in the courtroom. Lauren wept, the tears of someone finally released from the agony of injustice. Ellen Monroe stepped forward and held her hand tightly. At last, justice has returned to the one who truly deserves it. Ethan remained silent, his expression hollow as the judgment ended. He received a sentence of probation, lost all parental rights, and was removed from the family will. At the root of it all, in her prison cell, Eleanor Franklin found herself more alone than ever. Inmates avoided her. No one wanted to be near the woman associated with death and betrayal. One day, Eleanor sat alone, trembling as she held the bowl of watery prison soup. She tried to lift it again but vomited immediately. She whispered to herself. "That smell, it's the same soup from that night. Is fate circling back?" Her gaze darkened, fading slowly into the cold, inescapable void. In another city, Lauren now lived with Gabriel, the little boy she had legally adopted. She was invited to speak as an ambassador for the campaign. Psychological abuse, silence kills. Standing before a crowd, Lauren spoke with unwavering strength. "I didn't survive through hatred. I survived because I refused to poison others the way they poisoned me. But that doesn't mean I forgive." Her story was met with applause, empathy, and belief in a brighter future. Lauren knew the road ahead would still be long and filled with challenges, but at least, the darkness had been lifted. The story affirms that justice will ultimately prevail, even after trials filled with pain and loss. It warns that silence, psychological abuse, and slander can destroy a person's hope and honor. But persistence, truth, and courage will cast out darkness. And while love and forgiveness don't mean forgetting crimes, they are the means by which one survives and rises. The tale is also a reckoning. Betrayal and cruelty carry consequences, and in the end, every mask will fall.
If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.